One of the most controversial topics today in America is whether citizens should or should not have the right to bear arms. And we have multiple viewpoints on this. Do you ever think about what? About the right to own guns? No, why? I've noticed it in the news a lot lately.
Let's keep in mind the Second Amendment of the Constitution was written over 200 years ago when a good gunman might get 3 shots off a minute with a musket. It's hard for me to believe the Founding Fathers envisioned a world where one man could or would fire 400 rounds a minute into a crowd of people. This should not be difficult. How many people have to die before people will apply a little logic to gun laws? Do more children need to die? Does a hospital need to be attacked? What is your limit? Does it have to happen to you or a loved one before you start to think differently about gun laws? The people of this country have so much power. We've protested, pressured our congressmen and women, and we've seen that work. Why can't we do the same to reduce and hopefully eliminate the insane amount of gun violence in America? Excuse me for not being willing to wait to let healing begin, for not accepting that now is not the time to talk about a major problem in this country.
I was talking with Stephen Brown, the resource officer at Oakland High School, today about it, and he had some interesting ideas. Really? Yeah, I asked him.
My standpoint on the Second Amendment is I believe the right to the citizens to have arms to protect themselves. Our government put that in place 200-something years ago because they knew the tyranny of British government was to control the population of the people. And the Second Amendment kind of puts checks and balances in with that. Pros of gun ownership in America are definitely self-protection. That's pretty much your right as a citizen, as a human being, to preserve and protect life. Cons of gun ownership in America, I think putting a weapon, whether it's a gun or anything that can cause death, in someone's untrained hands. I think it'll be challenged in the future with certain restrictions on who can own a firearm, why they can own a firearm. However, I don't think that any push for the Second Amendment to be substantially ratified would be successful. I think there would be revolt amongst the people if the Second Amendment was ever challenged in a aggressive manner.
And that was what Officer Brown had to say. I remember seeing Representative Jim Hines talk about guns on C-SPAN the other day. I watched that too.
I and those of us who stand for gun safety respect the Second Amendment. Many of us enjoy hunting. Many of us enjoy target practice. Many of us believe that perhaps you are safer if you can defend yourself. We have no interest in taking away anybody's guns. But we have interest in at least 2 things that have the virtue of being supported by the vast majority of Americans. Universal background checks. The simple idea that if you're going to exercise your Second Amendment rights and buy a weapon, we should check to see if you are violent, if you are a terrorist, if you're likely to do harm with that deadly weapon. That's a simple idea that has about 90% support in this country, and yet it will not be brought to this floor in what is known as the House of Representatives. Do we represent or do we not?
He had some good points. Yes, but I found Officer David Clark to give a little bit more insight on it since he works in the justice system. Yeah, and he was very direct, which helped me understand his viewpoint on the subject.
You see, for too long in Washington, D.C., the individual hasn't mattered. If you're not part of a special interest group or if you don't have a powerful lobby behind you, you can't get a seat at the table to participate in important discussions. But I took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. And the Constitution, ladies and gentlemen, does not come a la carte. It's all inclusive. It grants rights to the citizens, inalienable rights endowed by the Creator, not granted by inclusion in some group or cause. And when we start down the road of picking apart the Constitution to fit a certain political agenda, my friends, we are headed toward a very dark place in government called tyranny. What's interesting is that many of these attacks on the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms are a pretty recent phenomena. For most of our nearly 240-year history as a constitutional republic, the right to keep and bear arms was never seriously questioned. It has only been in the last 30 or 40 years that this inalienable right has been challenged. In 1775, here in the New World, a group of renegades we call the Founding Fathers understood the threat posed by a strong centralized government. So they created this idea of self-rule around a document that strictly limits the power of government, one that places the power with the people, the individual, and the states.
Being American means having rights and being free. Whether you're pro-guns or anti-guns, the right to bear arms is an important part of American culture.
Welcome to the inner workings of my mind.